Were you all just in like a waiting room kind of thing? Yeah. Okay, interesting. I was like, huh, I thought for sure someone would show up. And I was just on another Zoom room somehow. Hmm. All right. Well, I think some people will keep trickling in, but we can get started here. So I'm going to give a short presentation, and then my intention is to make this as interactive as possible. So really at any point, but after I give a short overview of some of the gatherings that I've been hosting and some of the different collective projects I've been stewarding, yeah, I'd love to just kind of open it up into a ask me anything type session, or we could have a conversation, see what wants to unfold. So I'm going to share my screen and go through a little presentation. Okay, give a thumbs up if you can see the slide. Great. So I'm Tucker. It's good to be here on the Limicon land. Um, yeah, so just going to give a brief overview of basically for the past 2.5 years, I've hosted and organized about 15 different gatherings or conferences or facilitated various collective projects and experiments. I like to think of them as art projects at the end of the day. And I would call them all being like beautiful embodiments of what a metamodern culture, a metamodern sensibility can be, representations of this time between worlds or this liminalness that we seem to all be attracted to. And so one of those projects is called Constructing Consciousness. We've had 7 gatherings over the past couple of years in 5 different countries, and there's been over 100 people that have participated. Can you all see the photos, or is my Zoom thing blocking them? Okay, great. Yeah, so these are just some cute photos. You might recognize some fellow Limiconers in the images. So a project so basically constructing consciousness is a global network that is decentralized all over the world. And we would go to different countries and different places and then invite people to that for a short term, 4 or 5 day gathering. And then, but something that I really was desiring, something that I was really, really craving for in my own life was to actually have an in-person collective that I could have more of a weekly or regular basis connection with. So a whole bunch of synchronicities played out. I'm actually gonna in the end, I'm going to share a bunch of links to different Substack articles. So for each of these projects, I've written in depth about how that was created, what some of the learnings were, what the different, intentions and principles were. So if you're interested in any of these projects, I'll share those links and then you can dive deep. So I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and this group just beautifully formed, like through this seeming series of small miracles. And we've had 5 gatherings, basically one a season that are for an extended, 4 or 5 days. And then we've also had bi-weekly meetups where we practice and play and pray together. And so we've had about 8 to 12 participants that have been a part of this. It's been going for 2 years. And yeah, it's all local to folks here in Boulder, Colorado, where I live. These are some photos from some of the gatherings. So last spring, I believe it was, or summer, I was in Bergerac, France at Life Itself. And Cheryl Shu and Rosa and River and myself, we put on a Soulmakers Gathering. So this is for folks who have practice soul making Dharma with Robert Bea, or also I come more from the Bill Plotkin lineage. There's also imaginal practice. It's this emergent we space practice that is coming into the metamodern sensibility. And Cheryl and I and some others, we really wanted to bring folks together who are at the forefront of practicing that way of being and sensing into like what wants to emerge both in our individual lives as our soul expressions here on the planet, but also collectively. What is it about this particular constellation of humans that we're gathering, and then also all the collectives and the various network nodes that we represent, and then of course the larger planetary and even cosmic unfoldings. How can we hold all of that kind of simple and dance between all of those different expressions, and be danced by as well, to allow all of that to kind of shape our experience, and inform the next best move. There's some photos from that gathering. I would definitely recommend Life Itself. I'm sure you all have heard of them. They have a beautiful couple of retreat centers in Bergerac, France. So definitely would recommend checking that out. So there's an upcoming gathering that I am source keeping called Gathering of the Sourcekeepers, and I'm also doing this with Cheryl as well as Daniel Thorson. We hope to have about 40 participants for 5 days in Asheville, North Carolina. Part of it will be a hurricane relief effort, and so we're going to do some hands-on build a barn, as Layman Pascal says, to help with the recovery efforts in Asheville. Really seeing Asheville as one of the main, network nodes for our liminal web. So partly it's us showing up and wanting to serve the local lands, the local community there that is has such a potent representation of the larger field that we're all a part of. Source keeping, I'll talk a little bit more about later, but essentially it's the idea that every project or initiative or collective or nonprofit that is started is sort of birthed in one person. Like that initial download, that initial seed of the idea often comes through one individual, and that individual can be called the source keeper. And there's a sense of having some creative authority over that responsibility that we often have when we're impregnated by soul with a mission or a task in the world. And so this is bringing folks together who have birthed different projects or different initiatives and feel deep that work is deeply connected to their soul essence, to their unique offerings, to their dharma, you could say. And we're going to practice and play like how can we be in relationship with that what is ours to keep individually, but then also sense and attune to how that can cross-pollinate and dance and collaborate with different people's projects in the network, and how can we be informed by and help share and steward other people's work as well, as one community. So I've also been on the core organizing team for the integral conferences in North America. Those who are in Denver. Well, one was in Denver, and the next one is coming up. And this has been led by Tom Habib, who him and Layman and myself, we gave a presentation earlier. I believe the recording's online somewhere. Yeah, so conferences have been really fun, and something that I've been envisioning but haven't, maybe next year I'll say, is a Metamodern festival, like basically taking Limicon and bringing it into, yeah, I see Daryl snapping. Daryl, I need your help with that, man. Basically bringing like the best of, say, Burning Man culture and Limicon culture, and also, some of the metamodern culture, some of the different gatherings that I've been doing that really have a deep relational space, a deep sense of practice and relational coherence, and bringing that into more of a, say, 200 to 300 person mini festival. What does that look like? How can we create art and make music and magic in a way that is bringing online new sensibilities? I'm seeing some stuff in the chat, and for some reason, I don't have access to my cursor. So if you have a question or something that's time sensitive, just raise your hand, and then I'll be able to see you that way. So lastly, I was a student at a really powerful, beautiful program that I'd recommend called Generating Transformative Change with Pacific Integral. I actually just got off a call with Jeff Fitch, who was just sharing about the model and the praxis that's behind the work that Pacific Integral does. And that was about 3 years ago, I was a student, and then I've been working closely with Pacific Integral since, and one of the lead organizers for the grad gathering that's coming up, and the one that happened last year, and also facilitating their year-long transformational program right now. Okay, so what are the core intentions? Like at the end of the day, like why are we doing it? Why am I so why do I stay up at night and wake up really early in the morning to do this work? And I think it's actually really, really simple. It's to be in love and to create a new culture. So what do I mean by that? Basically, to be in love with my friends, with new and old friends, to be literally and metaphorically sitting around the campfire, to be sharing stories and dreaming about the future and creating arts and healing and grieving and letting go of that which is no longer serving. So these are all really ancient, I would say timeless even ways of human relating. And in that way, there's nothing really that special about these gatherings from that perspective. Now, how we maybe make meaning of what we're doing and how we perhaps talk about it or even feel it in some way might be different. There might be uniquenesses to it from other cultures and other times. But I just want to really emphasize that like the kind of the primary purpose is just to really be fully embodied in our human experience and sharing that with each other. Secondly, it's about creating a new culture. And so from this kind of timeless, already whole, perfect uh, sorry, I have a note taker that came up on my screen. I'm gonna just close this real quick. I'm gonna approve it, and then I'm gonna reshare my screen so it's not blocking my view. So to create a new culture, when we are in like basking in each other's brilliance as humans, which is quite simple, it doesn't need to be some big expression of excellence. It can sometimes just be like I remember this one friend, Michael, and I was just looking into his eyes sitting on the field, and I just started to cry because I just felt how beautiful he was. And from that like sense of presence and love and just depth and gratitude for being in connection and relating, there was this kind of natural impulse to share that with him. And then that sharing created an experience in him that allowed him to let go of something. And then this whole kind of process unfolded for the next couple of days. And it was almost like there's this intelligence, this sort of like magic eros that can just do its thing when we can be present to it and listen and kind of allow and also co-create with it. And this has what feels to me, it feels evolutionary. That's a word that's used a lot. And I don't mean that in a sense of like we're mapping some far out destination that we need to get to, but it feels organically, inherently like there's some sort of way that life is trying to be more of itself, to become more fully expressed. And one way that I would describe this is gathering in wholeness and also gathering as wholeness. Um, so there's a way in which we can feel as if, like, when we're together and when we're present, that everything we really need is kind of already here. And including the desires and the longings in us that are wanting something else or something more, there's a sense of being able to rest in the trust in that and the intelligence of those, yeah, forms of communication. And from this kind of ever-present wholeness is so much like erotic desire for longing and creativity and expression. And the idea is not necessarily to oscillate between the two, but to see that every moment is both simultaneously. It's both an expression of like the pure grace of being alive and an expression of that which that grace is desiring to touch or to kiss or to merge with or to differentiate with as well. Wholeness is not this it's not always this kind of like blissy sort of like woo-woo kind of thing. Wholeness also includes like fucking feeling like shit sometimes, and feeling completely contracted or not wanting to participate in the group or what's happening. And so, yeah, can we bring awareness to what is happening and see it as perfect, even in its imperfection? And so in a way, this is this all these gatherings, all these collective projects are holons of life itself. And in a way we could say this is already always the case, and that's fine. That feels true on some level. But when we can be consciously aware of it and collaborate and commune with that recognition, like we're communing with the awareness that we're creating kind of with and as life itself in this ever multifaceted, multidimensional dance. There's some like delicious honey like current of energy that I find can come online. And it's almost like a wink in the eye kind of thing, like a cosmic joke in a sense of like we're here and we're not taking ourselves too seriously, but even when we are taking ourselves really seriously, there's also kind of like a lightness that's held in the space. And that lightness simultaneously or paradoxically allows us to go really fucking deep and really sincerely into something that's meaningful. So these are just ways of describing the culture that I both have consciously tried to cultivate and invite in, but also it feels like because of the metamodern culture and sensibilities of the folks who are coming, that there's sort of a natural inclination to play in this way, to show up in this way. So one like on that last point actually is around curation. I've decided to so far really have all the gatherings that I've put on and the collectives that I've helped start to be curated. And the thing that is tough about that is that it makes it much more harder to be financially generative, right? Versus putting out flyers at the local coffee shop or doing some expensive ad purchase on Facebook to get all the tech people to sign up. But the benefit of curation is that there's it's almost like if I was to have a wedding, like I wouldn't just invite anyone to my wedding. There's a sacred event that is happening, and there's certain qualities or certain relationships or certain capacities even that are feel like a prerequisite in order for the group to feel safe, the group to feel held just enough to paradoxically move into unsafe territory or to go and expand beyond our growth edges. And so the curation, yeah, for me it feels really important so far. And I also want to find ways to really strengthen the culture and the practices that we're doing so that we can continue to expand and open up and invite more people into these spaces. Um, So in terms of how they're organized, I tend to work in trios. For some reason, that's just felt really good. And the way that I haven't really consciously done this, but I've kind of learned that it's a pattern that works over time, is to have one person who's typically more strongly holding the pole of masculine energy. And they bring like a strong kind of discernment and clarity and sense of ethics, a sense of being able to kind of cut through. And really, that creates a sense of safety and anchoring in the space in the field. A lot of this is energetic. Most of this isn't ever explicitly named, but it's felt, right? It's felt. And then often there's a female-bodied person who's more in that kind of dancing between realms, bringing in ceremony and ritual. Someone who, yeah, can like really finely attune to the energetic currents that are happening and working in more of a shamanic capacity. And then the role that I often find myself playing is more the like interpersonal shapeshifter, the weaver, the trickster in a way, the one that's like really creating different organizing and weaving different relationships, and sometimes being more the face of the project. Um, and yeah, also kind of bringing a vulnerable, open heart, I think is one of my gifts, which in a way gives permission for others to also open up and share in that way. Hmm. So sourcekeeping, yeah, basically I just wanted to share about this is that I've really run into challenges in the past with how I can wield my creative power and also create collaboration and co-creation and invite that in at the same time. And I can't say I've cracked it by any means. But one thing that's helped is having this source keeping framework that it's like a whole structure for how to organize gatherings. There's a book called Work with Source, which I'd highly recommend. It's really quite excellent. I can share it later. And so an example of this is when I created the Boulder Lighthouse Collective, I had this like download come through and I just knew exactly like the vision was crystal clear. And I sat down and I wrote the whole manifesto in just 1 hour basically. And it was just like a lightning bolt that I felt like all of a sudden I am the steward of this vision. And part of that vision was making it really collaborative and inviting in tons of co-creation, inviting in other leaders. I didn't want to just be the sole leader of this project. But the thing is that I didn't quite know how to name that or to ask for that. And so I would say stuff like, oh, we're all co-creating it together. But then when someone would say like, oh, okay, well, I have an idea, let's do it this way. And then I'd be like, wait, no, that actually doesn't quite feel aligned with what I'm actually sensing. And then the person would be like, well, what do you mean you wanted co-creation? And now I'm co-creating it. And so there is a way that I learned over time where like holding the source energy of the vision, it's kind of like creating bumpers or boundaries that can invite in collaboration, but that collaboration is happening within a more structured or a more held space. And there's a sense of having, not being afraid to kind of have the authority to say yes or no to certain decisions, even when that might not fully align with the group consensus. And this has been a very liberating tool in my toolbox. Okay, so I'm almost done here, and then we're going to open it up. Basically, I just wanted to share that I have a vision. It feels like I had a meditation a couple months ago, and there was a sense that the vision for this would be actualized in a physical reality in about 5 years from now. So I'm 35 now, and by the time I'm 40, I imagine myself moving onto land to a place-based community, a regenerative village that's in person, that is year-round, that is multi-generational, that includes families and elders and everyone in between, and is embodying regenerative principles and a metamodern culture as best as possible. Obviously it's an imperfect, evolving art project like everything else in life. And so each of these different smaller gatherings and different collectives and different projects, including this talk right now, is kind of me being a lighthouse, like beaming out a vision, beaming out a certain, you could even say transmission that has a certain flavor or tone or texture. And in a way, it's like it's building a brick in this larger cathedral that is the lighthouse vision. And on a very practical level, it's me flexing my muscles and practicing and learning, making mistakes and doing the best that I can to grow and evolve as a community builder, as a steward of a vision, and as a human in general. If somebody gave me $1 million and a plot of land right now, I wouldn't take it because I don't feel that I'm actually ready yet to step into something like that. And so all of these projects are whole in themselves, and they're also part of a larger whole that is unfolding. And yeah, that's just one thing that I wanted to say about this project or these. One thing I wanted to say about metamodern culture is that I think that one of the gifts of that we can invite in is holding in a really responsible way, in a really sacred way, a vision, a North Star that we're moving towards, while simultaneously being open to emergence, to the mystery, to the unknown, to the craziness of life and the dance of existence that might be far beyond what our minds can ever conceive of. But some of the, more postmodern collectives that I've been a part of, often there's kind of an exclusive emphasis on not knowing, on just being in the mystery, on feminine wisdom. And I think all of that is like really, really important as a counterbalance to modernism. But with metamodernism, I would say, like, how can we all be in touch with the soul vision that is living through us and embody it as best as we can in the moment, while also knowing that it is unfolding towards a larger whole, a larger vision, a larger possibility, not just in our own individual projects and lives, but also this collective, also this culture, this society is growing towards something. And can we have the audacity, the courage to actually dream what that could be and to imperfectly walk step by step towards it until life tells us to walk in a different direction? And of course, we can listen to that. Just a few last photos. This is constructing consciousness in Hungary. Beautiful humans. This is the Soulmakers Gathering at Life Itself and the Boulder Lighthouse Collective a couple months back at our last gathering. Okay, this is my website and email. And yeah, I'd love to just open it up to just hear what's brewing, what's alive, what questions you might have. And I also don't intend to be, I'm happy to respond, but if there's super capable and beautiful people here that are also doing awesome community projects. So would love for others to also chime in with their perspectives. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Tucker. Yeah, you mentioned male-bodied and masculine holding the ethics. You also mentioned Layman Pascal, who published a book last year that advocates for the use of the N-word to be more common by white people towards Black people to help them get over their associations with the N-word and other slurs. And Layman also said in a podcast a couple years ago, he was punching down towards trans millennials, as he called them, and also the platforming of Mark Gaffney and laughing off the accusations of abuse against women and children across decades from him. He laughed it off as he's not so nice if you're a woman. And so I'm just wondering, what are your criteria for ethical male-bodied people, if that's one of the people you're mentioning and showing pictures of? And you also didn't say anything about non-binary or trans or gender fluid people like myself. And it's an area of great concern for me. I've been shunned from communities and encountered cult dynamics in online metamodern communities when I've raised these concerns.
Yeah.
And I have concerns, Tucker.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm pulling up a doc. First off, I'm not aware of any of those comments that Layman made, so maybe you could email me after and just share the point
Sure.
where that
Well,
was
did you
said.
read his recent book? Because he had a whole chapter right in
I
the middle
didn't.
dedicated to
No.
advocating for more racial slurs to be used across all races to help people get over the hurt that those words cause. Yes, the Gurdjieff book. Yes.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that is something
Art.
Gurdjieff never
Hey,
said.
Art. I'll check
Yeah.
it out. I can't respond because I don't know what you're referring to specifically, but
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
I can promise you that I will check it out. In terms of ethics, I just shared a doc that is for one of the projects, the Constructing Consciousness project. These are some of the ethics that we took a long time to really flesh out. We also brought together a whole team of folks that are included my elders and my teachers for their advising on this document. Yeah, I can say when I'm curating the collectives, if somebody is representing an aspect of diversity, there's many types of diversity, including diversity of capacities, diversity of worldviews, right? But often those folks have a lot more weight, and whether they'll basically, if you're a white straight male, then have the least chance of getting invited because that's such an outsourced demographic in the collective, and we're really, really, really trying to create balance. I think at every single gathering I've done, there's been about 50-50 gender balance, like right around in that ballpark. And I'm really proud of that because I don't think that can be said for a lot of different collectives containers in the broader space that we're in. So it's something that I'm in perfectly working, doing my best towards. And I'd love to talk to you after the call more to get your perspectives on it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Yeah, thank you. Ron.
Yeah, hey Tucker.
Hey.
Yeah, th this may be one of those asking for a friend questions, but I wanted to ask you about age, actually. And I'm just wondering, one, as a factual matter, just like the age ranges you see at stuff, I think like at Limicon, it's probably skewed younger. And this is like a terribly broad question, but wherever you want to take it, just how you see in these communities as they are and as they could be in terms of intergenerational transmission and the role of elderhood and that whole picture, which seems so key to me. And I just wonder how much it's happening. And if people in my range are tending, oh yeah, I don't want to schlep to a retreat center, and so it's maybe skewing younger just for that reason. So whatever, however you want to take it.
Yeah. So at Constructing Consciousness specifically, the Boulder Lighthouse group is all millennials, and so that's we're specifically just millennials. And but for Constructing Consciousness, that's the thing that we probably gotten the most participant feedback when we send out the feedback form later on. People are probably the most excited about the fact that there's such an age range from early 20s to 80 people, folks in their 80s. We celebrated, I think, Terry O'Fallon's 80th birthday at one of the last gatherings, for example. And what's really beautiful is that there's such a broad swath of different generations that are represented. And when we're all sitting around the circle, again, literally and metaphorically, there's a sense of like all that kind of falls away a little bit. It's not each person's uniqueness is still there and it's still important, but there's also a sense of sort of leaning back into the wholeness of the collective or of something larger that's kind of holding all the diversity at the same time. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited about like how the different collectives have been attracting people from different age ranges. At the Soul at the Sourcekeepers gathering that's coming up. Each night we're planning to have a fireside elder chat. And so that's inviting somebody that we feel is holding the qualities of elderhood, which doesn't necessarily mean age wise, but someone who is holding elderhood in the broader liminal web. And we plan to, yeah, just like all be present for them to share with what they're sourcing, what their vision is, and what their advice would be to younger folks. Marie.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to be touching a little bit on Maria Andrea's question because I know this is dear to both of us, but and she said mothers, but I would actually say families. I'm curious, what has your experience been with whole families? I think you said in your dream one, it's multi-generational and there are kids, but have you had any experience where kids have been completely welcome, invited, and present? And like, what are your learnings from that, I guess, or your takeaways or your advice? I find it actually very difficult to find spaces where I'm welcome as a family. And so I have to leave my kids in order to be able to participate in anything. And yet y'all are the exact people that I want to be influencing my children. So
yeah, that's such a good question. So there was one Constructing Consciousness gathering that we did in British Columbia that invited families and kids. And to be honest, it humbled us so much. Like the organizers just we didn't know how to deal with the complexity of that. How do we try to do this deep meditation, collective practice that's bringing in ritual components and also, someone's pulling on their mom's hair and saying that they're hungry at the same time. And like, we were just very, very humbled. And I think that's one of the reasons why I want to wait, at least like 5 years before I would invite in a land-based version where people are coming in with families and hopefully my own family by that time. I just feel like I have a lot to grow in this department. At the Soulmakers Gathering in France, we had two pregnant moms that were there, and we did this incredibly beautiful ritual that that was for Sylvie and her at that time yet to be born child. And she also has, I think, a 4-year-old child as well. And so that, that also included children, both her young son, but also honoring and creating rituals and creating art and soul making around the souls that have yet to be fully birthed into the world. So that was honestly one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. I was so humbled to be in that space. So it's a work in progress, and as we're practicing these different state and stage capacities that require a certain attuned presence, and in a certain way of like really being heightened in our awareness, bringing children into the space can just create an obstacle that can make that a lot harder. And at the same time, if we can't be in relationship with reality, then we're kind of like creating these little bubbles of existence that are somewhat disconnected from the fundamentals of the human experience. And, that has its own downsides. So if anyone is a parent here and has advice around this or has a way in which you could see, us weaving children in, I would love to have that conversation. Hmm. Anybody else?
Tucker, you didn't explicitly answer my other question. If you invite trans people, non-binary people, gender fluid people, or if they're not accepted in your communities.
No, there's definitely accepted. I don't believe we've had a trans identifying person at any of the gatherings, but I think I only know one person who identifies that way. So that might be a limitation of my own social network. And we've definitely had many people that identify all over the gender, um, sexuality spectrum. Like I wouldn't even be able to name in specifics because it feels like so much.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Yeah, I'm just curious if there's any like desire or longing that lives in you when you hear about these projects, or maybe even a sense of like, you know what, that's cool. I'm glad Tucker's doing that, but this isn't really something that I'm looking for. Um, yeah, like what are you feeling drawn towards or drawn away from when you hear about these different projects, and how can we as a group of humans that are together like come into more coherence around the next type of offerings that want to be born? Matthew.
Yeah, happy to share the thing that kind of pops up for me the most. Um, and it has to do with what you were saying about love. And I think there's like this sense that most people, I don't want to say most people, but I think there's a bit of a confusion with that word in our current culture and what it means, who we should love, what we should love, what are the right things to love. I think, at least from my experience, it tends to be reserved for like your spouse, kind of, or maybe your family. And I thought the experience that you mentioned was really powerful. So I'm wondering how or if you guys uh yeah consider or try to embody that word or that feeling or that concept yeah in your communities, or how it lands on you guys.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I feel like that's in a way, that's the only question that you just asked. Hmm. Well, there's this term that honestly I used to have a bit of resistance to it, but I'm beginning to see it in a different way, which is it's almost cliche in our spaces, but truth, beauty, and goodness. And for me, something that's been really important is the quality of beauty, of creating beautiful spaces, and that means gathering in beautiful spaces and beautiful retreat centers and beautiful natural settings, um, setting up candles in a beautiful way to evoke this depth dimension that might not be there when there's not like an aesthetic quality that invites in a certain presence. And also just like where one is speaking from and the felt sense of how we're showing up and how we're relating. Um, for me, and like all these little things, these like thousand almost unnameable, almost unconscious um, shimmers of beauty tend to open the heart, just like very naturally, very effortlessly. Not always in a big way. It's not like it's writhing on the ground in some ecstatic state, although that a couple of those experiences have happened at our gatherings. But it's often just like a 10% more. It's just a 10% more. And then there's like just more life that feels a little bit like love that wants to kind of share or go somewhere or express itself somehow. Um, and whether one labels it love, I don't think is important, but it's almost like you can feel when you're in the presence of beauty. And I think you can feel when you're in the presence of people's hearts opening. And like the body knows what it is, even if it's labeled or not labeled some word. Um, and I think that is what makes these spaces really precious for me. Like I feel like there's some way in which I'm trying to protect them like a little baby, like a newborn baby, because it's like every little gesture and every little word spoken and every little impact creates this ripple experience that shapes the field. And when you have a bunch of people who are pretty highly energetically sensitive and attuned, um, it's hard to like it's hard to hide stuff, you know? If I'm contracted and I show up and I start to talk, in the circle in the morning, like people can feel that and I can't hide. So it's almost like the collective awareness body has X-ray vision and kind of sees through people's masks in a way, which is really vulnerable. And the last thing I'll say is that there's that vulnerability is often held with like seeing it as kind of empty or just another arising. It's not, it's okay. It's already okay. Even if someone's tender or angry or not fully energetically showing up in the space, it's okay. It's okay. And there's something about that that feels loving as well. Gavin.
Hi, Tucker. I'm Asia,
Hey.
and I appreciate your vision and everything that you're saying. But I wanted to say that um, being not so inclusive to mothers and children kind of pushes me away because I'm a big child advocate, and I see that a lot of times we don't treat children as humans. And so I wanted to ask, because they can't control their communication, would you also not allow disabled people who can't do the same?
Um, I don't know. I don't like honestly, if you want my honest answer, I don't know. I think I would need to know who the individual is, and I would need to feel whether it would be a healthy and good and beautiful experience for that person and for the group. Um, I don't tend to, and I'm truly asking myself this if this is my own kind of shadow or blind spot, but I don't tend to necessarily curate like based off of these different group kind of identities, but more kind of just being like, oh, there's a soul, there's a human soul that is here as a possibility, and um, do they feel like a good fit for this project, for this experiment? And often that involves that involves direct communication, that involves, a Zoom call or getting to know someone or building a friendship with them first. And sometimes it's just like there's such a strong intuitive knowing that it's just clear as day. I've had a couple experiences where I've had dreams and like it feels like the person's soul kind of comes to me in my dream and says like, "Hey, I really want to be there." And the next day I wake up and invite them. So I don't know how to answer your question, but there's no part of me whatsoever that is pre-excluding anybody from the gatherings based off their abilities or their disabilities. It's really more of a case-by-case scenario. Ryan, is it Ryan?
Rian, yeah, like Ian with an R. I'm curious the what do you say like the attendance, like the cohort size of these is?
Um, it changes project to project and gathering to gathering. Some have 8 or 10 people, some have 30 to 50 people.
Gotcha.
And
I
then conferences are bigger. Yeah.
just trying to take lessons from existing successes, I guess, just in terms of human villages, human cities. But harder to do that with a container of 10 people than it is to have like 5 containers of 10 people with different sort of standards.
Yeah, I'm curious, can you say again what it is that you would
I
be
guess I'm
excited
imagining
about?
like you have let's say you have a container of only 10 people. It's harder to accommodate someone because it just who has very divergent needs because proportionally they end up taking a lot more of the resources than the sort of if they're in a crowd of 500 people. Like you can have pretty divergent needs and a planet of 8 billion people and we can still take care of you. A container of like 4 people is harder. So I was
Yeah.
just envisioning the larger that your cohorts are, the more you have the capacity to sort of dynamically section things out where you have a more stricter container that still has.
Yeah, I think there's something to that, like I don't know. I mean, the way if I was to I think romantic partnerships point to this. You bring 2 people together that share so much in common and still somehow they find every little thing that they, disagree about or clash on, and then that becomes the focus of a lot of the gathering. And so I think the diversity, like the tension of diversity is alive in every single moment, even you could say from a certain perspective. And um, I understand that there's a cultural component to bringing awareness to all that, but just on like a more simple felt sense way, um, it's that generative tension between the differences that creates some sort of like movement and some sort of dynamism, and that often creates art, and that often creates play, and that often creates a desire to get on our knees and pray to God that we are helped out through this moment, and maybe our brothers and our sisters, regardless of who they are, what they look like, in common, like hold us in that experience.
So
Chris.
I'll just finish saying the I guess I'm not meaning to push towards either pole, just sort of recognizing that um, I want babies in the world that I live in, and I also don't necessarily want babies in my breath work like trauma session crying right next to me sort of thing either. So it's just a
Yeah, totally. And I'll say I just got back from Pachamama. It's a community in Costa Rica where I've lived for 6 months, and they do ayahuasca ceremonies and all sorts of stuff. And in the morning, the kids are running around while the shaman's doing these crazy healings on people. And it's such a beautiful experience. Like every father bone in my body just like lights up and wants my kids to experience something like that. So yeah, totally yes, and to all of that. Chris.
Yeah, hi. So I wanted to mention I'm actually organizing a Metamodern retreat in Boone, North Carolina, scheduled for this August. So I just wanted to throw that out there just to give you a sense of who I am and what I'm doing. And I wanted to share that like your presentation is so unbelievably resonant and inspiring. Um, um, really, really touches me deeply. And um, And I'm also very recently, I've been really focused on evolving culture in different ways recently. And I found in my personal experience, I'm actually in a kind of big down cycle at the moment. And a reason for that is that I feel as though I've been focusing on um, improving culture in a lot of ways, and in this community stewardship kind of roles, and it's been actually at expense of some aspects of my personal life.
Mm.
So um, I guess I'm curious if you have um, some advice there, or something you can speak to that. Like, how do you um, um, balance some of these things? And really, the most pressing thing that I'm pointing to is um, um, supporting yourself financially as you do this work is the most relevant thing, I think.
Mm. Um, I don't. I haven't found a way to support myself financially with this work, so I feel you and all this. The upcoming gathering, I'm hoping to make like a decent chunk of money. But still, it's hundreds of hours of work, and I don't think that we have systems in place yet um, to financially reward community weavers, especially community
Mm,
weavers working on a smallish scale. You know, there's only what a couple thousand people maybe in our broader network that might be attracted to these types of gatherings. And so this isn't, again, this isn't like blasting it out to the masses.
yeah.
Um, so I've had savings. I was a documentary and still am a documentary film director, but I took 5 years off and I had a lot of savings from that work and was able to basically just break even on all the past projects that I've done. And now that is over, that game's over. I'm out of savings. And so all now there's a new type of energy coming online, which is like, okay, I have to actually like really step fully into charging a more charging more for the gatherings while also raising more for the gatherings to offer more scholarships to those who can't afford the full price, while also ensuring that some comes back to me so I can literally just buy my groceries and survive. And that dance is like the core question of my life right now.
Mm,
Would love to stay in relationship around that so we can share wisdom on it. But in terms
nice.
of like burnout, or I think you're speaking maybe to more on an energetic level.
Mm,
Um, there's something about these projects that because it's coming from more of a like I'm touching my gut right now, my stomach. It's coming from more of like a soul type of place. It feels like there's almost an endless energy or an endless excitement at least. Sometimes I get tired, obviously, I need to rest, but there's an endless excitement about them to create them. And especially I found when I have partners, when I have collaborators, if I'm just kind of going solo, which I have done for a couple projects, it's a lot less fun for me. Because like a lot of the gathering happens for say 4 days in person, but the planning and the afterwards, it's like hundreds of hours of collaboration. And in a way, that's more the gathering than the actual gathering itself. So these are just things I'm learning about myself is like find a great team, um, find ways to raise money or ask like have the boldness, I guess, to ask for a certain amount and then deliver on that, like really make it worth people's time and energy and and trust that trust that society and our network and our collective will find more systemic ways to support folks like us in the near future. Inshallah. And that's cool. You're in Boom. I just recorded a podcast with Ariana Barami yesterday and uploaded
amazing.
it. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah, she's on the core team for organizing that retreat. So,
that's cool.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, Gavin.
Hey, Hi, thanks. I I've wanted to just comment on like the conundrum that we are just addressing because it seems like I've thought about it a bit where I'm like, when you're doing this level of work, like when you're just getting down to the nitty-gritty of like these fundamental questions of who you are and like why are we here, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you're empowering people, which allows them to like not need uh addiction, for example, which is what so much of capital, like anything that's money oriented revolves around like some kind of like I need this or I need that. And so the more and more you engage in this exact kind of work, it's like the more people, people are like, I don't care about money anymore. I just want to give this away to everyone because it's good for them. So like, of course. And so this conundrum of like, how do you make money with this thing, even though I don't really care that much about money, you know? So that's my experience, and I just wanted to share that in kind of
Yeah,
second.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing some film work on the side, and I think if I had I think if I had 10 million, a million whatever dollars in my bank account, that I wouldn't be doing the film work, like just truthfully, honestly. But I'm doing it to help try to prevent turning these beautiful, again, art projects into some capitalistically successful thing that detracts from the overall quality of the experience. And I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I'm just taking it day by day. Well, yeah, if there's any other questions or comments or curiosities, Daryl, was it?
Yeah, thanks. Tucker has one other project that he's organized that he didn't talk too much about, but he also brought Metamodern Magicians to Burning Man, part of Camp Contact a couple years ago, and did that, yeah, 2 years, and he's still very much supportive of that too, I guess, in some ways. And I just want to let people know we are gathering a group of Limicon friends and Metamodern Magicians and so forth to join us in the desert if that's of interest. Tucker and I did a workshop about it online that's recorded. I don't think we're going to do anything this year, but please reach out to me if you're interested.
Thanks,
And then I just wanted to, yeah, can I ask you, Tucker, unless there's anything more on this? Yeah, I really appreciated your naming, like if you were having a wedding, who would you invite? And weddings are such magical spaces. They really, it's just so much love in one place. And the magic of it is you go to it and there are people you don't know there. Like it's you may have heard of them, you may meet them for the first time. Uh, so yeah, using that kind of as a model, like how would you say you source your people or curate, and are there people you don't accept in, or have you ever had to ask people to leave, or
Mm.
how do you take care of them when maybe they're messing up the vibe? How do you sense into that vibe?
Yeah, those are good questions. First, I just want to say it's funny because I made this presentation yesterday afternoon and I was like, I feel like I'm missing some project that I've been working on. And that's like, sometimes I feel like I'm a juggler and I have so many balls in the air that I don't actually remember what I'm juggling until one lands in my hand. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I'm doing that too. I kind of forgot about that. And so, yes, Metamodern Magicians, yeah, super, super fun and would definitely recommend everyone check that out. Um, Okay, in general, for gatherings that are larger than, say, just 8 or 10 people, um, there's usually a trio, right? And so there's invites that are coming from one of the three. Sometimes the three organizers know the person, like all three know one person, and sometimes only one person knows one person. But there's a sense of just trusting that. Um, Sometimes there's people there that are not really on anyone's radar, or they just kind of come up through some like friend of a friend somehow, and it just feels like a clear yes. I know that's disappointing to people who want like strict criteria and to have it all spelled out, but sometimes it just feels like a yes. And sometimes it just feels like a no. I haven't, some of my very best friends and like people that I spend the most time with and most love and would die for, have not been invited to my gathering. So it's not about how much I like somebody. It's not about that. It's about, it's about sensing like the soul of the gathering and then the individual souls and like feeling the constellation of them coming together. And it's very shamanic. It's very hard to describe, and it's very imprecise. You know, it's not a it's an art more than a science. We never had to ask anybody to leave any of the gatherings. There have been moments where someone's or yes was like provoking a certain dissident energy that was very strong and penetrating. And part of wholeness is embracing it. So first off, like, okay, this is happening now. Here we are. Okay, well, this too is sacred and God and beautiful, and also our boundaries are, and also, you know, having this tough talk is, and also kind of calling out, you know, or calling in, or having an elder, you know, talk to that person. So there's all sorts of little different scenarios. But the beautiful thing about having folks, especially where there's teachers and people that have had a lot of capacity, a lot of capacity to be in these spaces, um, is that there's kind of like a collective trust often. Now, I'm not saying that every single person there is deeply trusting the field. That's not the case. But like it's almost like beneath that, there's another layer of just sort of trusting that the container can hold what's happening and that there'll be some sort of attuned response to it. And that response might not be pretty or good, or it might have, you know, additional ripples or impacts, but, you know, something will happen. And at the end of the day, I take responsibility for what happens in these containers. Like, yeah, the buck stops with me. Um, but also, if we weren't bumping into each other and stepping on each other's toes and finding our edges, you know, then I don't think we would be having as much fun as we usually do. Okay, well, um, yeah, I don't know if we'll go to the full half an hour, but yeah, I just wanted to invite in. I know a bunch of folks are off camera, and so if you do want to chime in, or you could just be guided in this experience, you're welcome to just receptively receive it. But yeah, I just was maybe I'll just be really honest with you, actually. I forgot to come up with a collective practice. And then when I got to the slide where it said like step 3, collective practice, I was like, oh shit, I didn't even think of one. But what I've been sensing is just like, yeah, if we want to take a few minutes to just sort of drop in and just be with the fullness of everything that's happened and been discussed. And what I am most desiring of is to hear people's longings. And I think of these longings like prayers, like throwing a pebble into the pond and being like, hey, here's a dream I have, or here's a vision I have, here's a longing I have. And trusting that the people here, the people in the recording, will be the soil for which that seed could be planted. So if you'd like to stay, you're welcome to jump off if you'd like to jump off. And if not, I just invite you to settle into your seats, and you're welcome to close your eyes or rest your gaze. Just allowing a couple of deep breaths to caress your organs. Maybe just sensing into the dimension of your experience that already feels at home. It doesn't need anything to change. Just feeling any energy, almost like a snow globe, just floating down with gravity to your toes and the floor. Feeling the earth was holding us all. And from this spaciousness, the stillness, from the silence, just see if you can open up 10% more to the whisper of that deeper voice. That knowing that sometimes will speak in sensation or intuition. That inner eye that can see worlds that don't yet exist, yet are also living right here. And just sensing how there's other humans on this call that are also listening to that whisper and seeing with that inner eye of intuition, that are sensing with soul. And imagining that there's millions of humans right now all over the earth who in this very instant are praying, are closing their eyes and making themselves available to spirit. Just feeling how what we're doing right now is part of a larger collective, a larger intelligence that is gracing each of us in its own time. And that each of us are but a puzzle piece in this cosmic mosaic art project that is emerging now. And when you feel that energy arising to express or to share, the invitation is to just describe with words or song or with your body, with movement, the piece of the puzzle that you're holding, that your heart is beating, and to trust that it's part of and always evolving collective canvas that we each get to paint on. So the floor is open.
Love.
No need to raise your hand. You can just unmute and talk.
Hi. Um, I just wanted to offer 2 p.m. Pacific. I'm doing a session on metamodern politics. So I hope, all of you and more attend that. I think it addresses a lot of the gaps in metamodern sense making circles and communities and organizers. And just to double click on some of the concerns Art Pinsoff had at the beginning, I'd say it's way worse than people realize. And, Layman's a colleague and a friend, somebody I can like critique about that kind of bullshit, but it still happens a lot. And there's a lot of cover ups about it. That said, my topic is politics, political thinking, and integration. This upcoming talk is not to unpack all the negative things and the fallacies people orbiting this concept do. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. It's good to see you, Jacob.
Okay, I want to express my gratitude for you doing this work and having seen, I think, like the journey unfold a little bit. It's wonderful to see the deepening and to see the deeper embodied fullness of that in culminating, I guess, or being in a milestone with the village. And I want to say I share Brent's, not sure if it's a concern, but I share what Brent cares about in terms of that becoming something that reaches people who didn't vote like we did. And I think I am kind of like Tucker, as you were saying, like there we might, in kind of keeping out the babies, we might also keep out the people who are like not of our mind or are on the other side of the polarity. And I just want to say, like, I deeply care for that, and I'm with that open inquiry of how to invite people into this, and especially what to do with the people who don't accept our invitation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really provocative. I really like how you frame that, Jacob. That's powerful. I don't want to get into the politics side right now, but I'll share that there's somebody staying at my house right now who's attended a gathering, and she's a dear friend. And I can tell you her political views are about as far opposite as mine are. And I still had a beautiful breakfast with her this morning. So
I'm curious if you're aware of much in the way in this space of sort of like meta protocols, I guess, and not to be too buzzwordy about it, but just like the idea of like I'm going through this book, Emergent Strategy, of like books that are like or systems, frameworks, any sort of thing of like empowering people to create their own sorts of dynamics that are eudaimonic or whatever. I'm in a couple different sort of social spaces that are just like herding cats, I guess, and I have like opportunities in some of them to like acquire institutional power and sort of like enforce the law, but that's like kind of like feels not really like it's going to long term produce the types of outcomes that I want. And I sort of lack much of sort of theoretical fluency or familiarity with community organizing paradigms as such. It feels like most of the successful community organizers I know have just been doing it their whole life. It's sort of like they're like just natural born community organizers, I guess.
Hmm. I think there's a book called Why We Gather, um, that I've only read the first chapter of, but yeah, why it's called The Art of Gathering. Um, I would recommend Pacific Integral's year-long transformational program called Generating Transformative Change. It it's really about how do we show up and relate to everything, but also to the collectives that we find ourselves in, and how do we be emergent leaders. So that's a big part of this is emergent leadership. I feel like I foregrounded myself way too much in my presentation. It's hard not to, but the purpose of me doing all the work that I'm doing to curate and create these gatherings is so I can step back as much as possible and everybody else can step in. And if and when like I want to as an individual to kind of share or express something, then I can do that as one of the many participants. But I'm not showing up as a teacher or a leader. And I think that's or sorry, I'm showing up as a leader, but I'm not showing up as a teacher or like a some. I don't want people to pay attention to me at the gatherings. I want to hang out in the hot tub and talk to my friends or be in a really interesting, dialogue space with in a breakout session. Um, so I think as having a background in film directing, I kind of got a knack for hiring a bunch of people to put on a certain event and curate, the actors and the crew and to go and do something for a few days that's often very little sleep and a lot of energy. But beyond that, I don't have any resources, no, besides
I'm
this.
glad you Nice. I'm glad you walked back your I am a leader thing. I feel like sometimes in these spaces people are like there should be completely flat hierarchy. And I'm like, that just seems inefficient in some ways. So I do think there is a cause for there to be decision makers, like yeah, I think that's kind of like what you were starting the very, very beginning of the talk maybe, and just sort of like these roles that need to be occupied just sort of incidentally almost.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm curious to know, are you aware of anything like a lot of this is sort of like, a year-long program is a pretty big buy-in if you want to make all your neighbors into emergent organizers. You know what I mean? Like, is there something that's like, go organize a picnic today, kind of like things, or do you sense a need for that? Is that coming from my own sort of naivete that that's not really a helpful link in the dissemination of that sort of wisdom or
Oh, I mean, I just love being around people most of the time. And so I would love to be invited to your picnic party or your, what the block party. I'd
to be
recommend the Art of Gathering.
I direct my questions to you, just
Yeah.
presuming that you're more plugged in, not necessarily like you're the
So
knowledge bestower or something, but
yeah, no, I mean, I'm doing as much as I can locally here in Boulder and around the globe, and I often find myself wanting to do more. And you know, yeah, just sending out some invites now to friends who are located. I have friends that are all over the globe, and that makes it really hard to connect in person and travel and get to see folks. And there's sadness there, which is why I want to live more in person in a place-based community and grow over decades with people and not just hour-long Zoom calls, as great as that is. So I say the more the merrier. Yeah, I'm curious if anyone else has just sort of like a vision or a piece of the puzzle that emerged in the
Yeah,
meditation or an offering that you would like to share.
yeah, I can jump in, Tucker. Yeah, I was wondering if that's what you were asking, is kind of what vision arose. Yeah, very simple and probably related to what I asked before, but just what came up is intergenerational local, physical community with, everything from kids to the elderly. And just the image of all holding hands horizontally, but together also raising our hands vertically to the divine for guidance. And it's a sunny, non-humid day came up. So wherever I am. But yeah, thanks for the process. It's cool.
Thanks, John.
I guess I'll also share really quick. I think the thing that stood out most from the presentation is about having or experimenting with communities that enable different ways of feeling, however that might be framed. So I guess I'd like to encourage and share leaning into that feeling and having the courage to follow that feeling, even if it's confusing or difficult to follow. Yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Thank you. Hey, Justine and Eve. It's nice to see you both.
Justin, yeah.
Justin, sorry.
No
Cool.
worries.
That's a fun name. I like your name.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Just taking it in.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I feel like deeply, deeply inspired by what you're offering and dreaming into. And I feel like really wanting to participate and be in this type of a process. And, you asked for longings. I think some longings arose for me. And one of them is just like practicing what I would call maybe like dimensional intimacy. And I even imagine it as like very simple, like just even practice with an image or practice with a poem with a small group of people and just like staying present and in relation with the unfolding. And I think something really, really special happens there. And like Matthew, when you were talking about feeling in different ways, I have a longing to kind of like practice aliveness. And also you were kind of pointing to it too, Tucker, when you talked about that 10% more openness. I just want to like practice, like being in a field of love with people.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for bringing the word intimacy into the field because it's such an important word. And sometimes I like to think of it as into me, I see. So there's a sense of like, I'm actually coming closer, like into something, and that something is me, but it's also something unique and like holding both the particularity of it and the sort of universality, and then becoming more of oneself by being more intimate is I think that's a beautiful love practice and something that I want to like this my collaborator Lee Reese and a few other women who have this very beautiful shamanic way of showing up have really taught me over the past couple of years like how to actually do that more. I think it's an innate capacity, but it's also a capacity that, like you're saying, we can grow into and practice. And just grateful for the women who have guided me there.
I loved what you said. There's a while ago, something about kind of feeling life with this longing to become more of itself. Does that sound like a accurate reiteration? And I feel that that might be sort of the undercurrent that's in all of these communities. And I have such like a felt sense of that longing, that like creation groaning to become. And I love that there are people who are noticing and paying attention to and wanting to cultivate communities and spaces and practices where we can like cultivate life. So thank you for phrasing it that way. It stirred something in me and it's been moving in me since.
Beautiful. Yeah.
That definitely stuck out to me when you said it too. She was like, I wasn't sure if that was the right wording. I was like, it's the right wording.
Yeah. Jeff Fitch, who was on the call, he's a dear teacher of mine. He just gave a presentation an hour ago about this model of, he calls it awakened wholeness. And one of the facets of that model is embodiment. And, we think of embodiment as like, oh, I'm more in my somatic body and, but he was bringing on another dimension, which is like when the soul fully chooses to be human and it's like, I'm here, God damn it. I am in it. I am in it, like in it, embodiment. And yeah, there's something where I feel like these gatherings, people often leave feeling more like, fuck yes, I am like I'm here. And there's some yeah, it's like it's an incarnated feeling of
Yeah.
being here now.
One of my handles is Justin Incarnate, so that's the cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're coming up at our time. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And yeah, I'll just put in my email. And yeah, like I meant it, if you have stuff that you wanted to share or I asked you to follow up, please do, because I would really love to be in connection. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Until we see each other again.